Good afternoon. Thank you for joining today's conversation, the 2023 tax season debrief. The time here is 2 o'clock here in Eastern time, so we'll give it a few more minutes to let people come on in and get settled while we get started. We have a really full agenda today, and we're excited to have you join us. Thanks again for joining, and we'll dive right on into today's conversation and overall tax season debrief. Before we get started, I want to welcome you. My name is Justin Chu. I am the Senior Program Manager for the Network Building team here at Prosperity Now. For some housekeeping, today's webinar is being recorded and will be mailed to registrants and available online within 1 week. All webinar attendees are muted to ensure sound quality. Now there is an interactive component where we will be unmuting you so you can join in on the conversation. But if you want to ask your questions or share your thoughts at any time, type into the GoToWebinar control panel and text box, and that way we can have your voice heard. And if you're experiencing any technical issues, please email gotomeeting@prosperitynow.org. And here's that bit about being unmuted. This is an interactive conversation today. So you can either set your option to phone call, use the dial-in number, and enter your audio PIN. All of this should be in the audio tab of your control panel. This is the best way for us to ensure that you have the best sound quality. However, if you are on computer audio, we still should be able to mute and unmute you. However, please note that will come from the microphone that is default to your computer settings. And if you want to be unmuted and be a part of this conversation, use the raise hand icon and we will unmute you and we'll prompt you before we bring you into the conversation. So how do you get the most out of today's call? Join us from a quiet space, grab a coffee or snack and settle in. And like I said before, we really want you to engage. Send us your comments and questions as you listen. And finally, reflect on ways to apply what you've learned today into your own work. For those who don't know about Prosperity Now, I want to share a little bit of time talking about our mission. And our mission is to ensure everyone in our country has a clear path to financial stability, wealth, and prosperity. So for today's agenda, we have the welcome and housekeeping, and then we'll move on to the meat of the agenda, which is about the 2023 filing season, how it went for you, and how it went for our expert panel here today. And we really want to have this as a back and forth conversation and dialogue with you, the audience. And then we'll have a bit of final thoughts and some exciting breaking news, and then we'll go to next steps and close. For today's panel, we have Graham O'Neill, tax strategist for the network building team and the Taxpayer Opportunity Network here at Prosperity Now, and Kara Cardati, tax assistant program director with United Way of Greater Richmond and Petersburg. So I'll turn it over to Graham to get us started.
Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me okay. Again, just as Justin introduced me, and thank you for that introduction, Justin. Graham O'Neill. I'm the tax strategist here with Prosperity Now. I'm the one who sends a lot of emails about our Taxpayer Opportunity Network, and I'm the person who I hope some of you have talked to and helped your program with any issues that come about. We want to thank you all, first of all, for having another successful VITA season. The people joining this call are the heart of the VITA program. You're the people that do the work. And we couldn't be more grateful that you're deciding to spend your time with us today, and even more so to give us your input later on in the conversation about how the tax season went. From our perspective, the tax season was better than the last 3 or 4 years, which isn't saying much these days. But this season seemed to go off without too many major interruptions. Our filing deadlines, for the most part, stayed in April. We saw the number of returns filed by VITA and TCU organizations climb up to over 2.5 million, and we saw refunds of around $2.3 billion claimed through the VITA TCE programs. So those are just two incredible numbers that I think speak to the power of this program. And I think we should all be very, very proud that we're all get to be a part of that. So with that said, we want to get into this conversation. We want to learn about how the season went for you, because like I said, we here from DC don't get to be in the trenches like you. We don't get to see what's going on. So we need you to tell us how the season went so we can plan to make next season better and every season thereafter. So thank you for being with us, and can't wait to jump in. And with that, I will welcome Kara Cardati, our president of our National Steering Committee.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Graham. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here with you guys, and I'm really excited to kick off this conversation. Again, I'm Kara Cardati. I am the Taxpayer Opportunity Network Steering Committee Chair, and my role in this capacity is to really kind of connect with you guys again that are doing the work, hearing feedback, bringing it up so that we can make the VITA program even stronger. And I'm really excited to kind of kick off the conversation. I also support a program connected to United Way of Greater Richmond and Petersburg. We are in the state of Virginia, and I'm part of a really great coalition, state coalition, as part of my state. But I'm so excited to be with you guys today and just say, really looking forward to hearing how well the season went for you guys, but also the challenges. This is supposed to be really interactive. I definitely want to hear from you, so I won't speak too much longer, but I just want to say thanks so much for all the work that everybody does to make this program successful. And if we could go to the next slide. Thank you so much. We are jam-packed with the time that we have, of course. These are the high-level topic areas that we're going to dive into. Thanks again for joining. I see the attendee list going up. I know that it's been a pretty busy day, so thanks for giving us a little bit of time. We're going to jump right into service delivery models, go into volunteer management, and really want to hear what's going on within the program. So thanks so much. And sorry about that. Next slide. So we are definitely going to kick off again with wanting to ask for your feedback, whether you feel comfortable taking yourself off mute or putting your comments and questions into the chat here. We really like to be able to see how much of an impact you guys had in your local communities. Again, in retrospect for what we did as a field, 2.5 million returns, $2.3 billion in refunds claimed. So that's just really amazing. Want to see what you're able to bring back to the conversation. Next slide, please. Again, so this is a group discussion. You are muted, so we're going to kick off again and start off with service delivery. We really want to know what was your model this year. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll go ahead and jump in right to the first poll. You'll see this coming up on your screen. We really like to see what types of sites you guys operated within your programs. I'll start to say we had a combination within our program. Most of our partners went back to a traditional tax preparation model, but we did have kept a very strong virtual presence as well, being able to partner again with Get Your Refund. So if you can take some time, we'll give you a few seconds. Please select all that apply within your own organizations. And again, if you're just joining us, I think we're starting to see the results coming in, and over and above, I can see that many of us went to back to traditional tax preparation, 86%. But I'm happy to see that a strong percentage kept with the drop-off model and virtual and other at a 17%. So this is where I'd like to be able to hear from you guys. What, if you want to share a little bit more about what you guys did, what worked well in the model that you used, what would you like to improve, and what are some best and promising practices that you want to share with the field? So again, if you'd like to take yourself off mute, and I am looking through the chat to see if we've got any questions coming in. So feel free to please raise your hand, again, for technology that you'd like to be able to share, come off mute, and talk a little bit more about your program, what models, what worked well. Again, I'll say until we get our first caller coming in, within our own program in Virginia, in the Richmond area, most of our partners went back to traditional, and that again is face-to-face. We were appointment-based, so we kept that model instead of walk-ins. So it was mostly appointment-based, scheduling appointments coming in for the days that we worked. But we did have some sites continue with the drop-off model where we split up the tax preparation experience within 1 or 2 visits, depending on how they were signing. Coming in on the chat, traditional so much easier and quicker. I definitely would agree there in terms of the paperwork that goes along with doing drop-off and the supplemental materials coming in, that traditional is faster. Looks like we might have someone coming in. Is that a caller coming in? Hey guys, I'm just trying to connect if there is a call coming in. How you do that, dial in using your telephone, raise your hand, or put something in the chat box.
Yeah, so we're gonna go to Tamara first, and then Desmond next.
Awesome.
Tamara?
Tamara, can you?
Hi, this is Tamara. I'm here in Nashville, Tennessee. And what we found, virtual, our numbers were down for virtual, but I haven't really done a deep dive to figure out why they were down, but I have a feeling it was because we didn't have people, non-filers, looking for their stimulus check. But I will say this, the virtual that we had, the taxpayers that used virtual were much more knowledgeable about the system. We had a lot of returning taxpayers who had used the system in prior years and just loved it and wanted to use it again. We did have a couple of drop-off sites where we used virtual, and they came in, saying, this is what I want to do. And we also, though, we did keep a list of our email addresses for everybody that used virtual, and we sent an email about the beginning of February, saying, here, here's the link. So they had it right on their phone, so they could use that link. So we saw a surge in the people using our direct URL.
Well, that's awesome. Tamara, thanks so much for sharing. I think that's really great perspective, definitely to show how you guys were able to continue to bring the virtual into the, your regular ongoing service delivery model. So thanks for sharing that. I really appreciate that. And next, I think we have Desmond on the line.
Uh-oh. Okay. We had one site that pretty much used 80% customer portal. We had one site that did total drop-offs, and we ended up having to do one day to do interviews and scan documents, etc., and then one day the following following week for clients to come back to pick up their documents and to pick up the returns. We did try something a little different. We partnered with Urban League this year, and we had like we only tried it for a couple Fridays, and we kind of taught some basic tax law for about an hour. Then we went into the FSA model, and so the younger ones, we did about 4 returns. The younger ones did very well. One of the comments that I heard was, I'm not giving my $500 to H&R Block anymore. Once they saw how easy it was to like key in a W-2 and just to prepare the return online. But we did go back to go back to traditional appointment only. And then having to factor in how many walk-ins we could take. So it was always a moving target, but it was very interesting this year.
Great. Desmond, first I'll ask for those that maybe don't know you, where are you based out of?
I'm from St. Louis. I'm from St. Louis. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And do you feel that keeping you mentioned the customer portal and doing the interviews on one day, were you doing full interviews on site in terms of having someone do the intake interview?
Yes, at the drop-off site, we did probably about 20 to 25 clients say per day. And yeah, that was on a Tuesday. And so we did a complete interview. Then we scanned the documents. Then we uploaded it. We created the return, uploaded it to the scanned documents folder. Assigned the returns to the preparers that were preparing the returns from home. And we had continued follow-up. They were so good about contacting clients to remind them of their appointments. Their no-show rate was very, very low. So there's a relationship between contacting the client to remind them, because we did use Appointment Plus, so that but as typically people don't read email, so if they didn't show up, they didn't show up. So gladly we just use the walk-ins to supplement those who did not show up.
Great. Desmond, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing and talking a little bit about how you were able to establish new partnerships and really think outside the box. So I really appreciate it. I think we're going to go to our next caller, which is Ever on the line.
Yes, hello, good afternoon, everyone. So I'm Ever Martinez with Bethpage Federal Credit Union, based out here in Long Island, New York. And so we offered 4 different tax filing options for our taxpayers through the VITA program this year. We offered virtual, which is a platform that we first started when the pandemic hit. So it was the first time for us doing the virtual process. We went back to traditional with a couple of VITA partners. We also offered in-person services through our mobile business development unit. And then we also did the facilitated self-assistance model with assistance from the New York State Department of Tax and Finance. What we found was sort of an equal amount of taxpayers using all 4 of those services. With virtual, of course, making up 50% of our numbers, because even still in New York, as open as it is, a lot of the taxpayers that we served still preferred the virtual model over the traditional and mobile in-person models. FSA wasn't as big of a success as we would hope for. So we're always looking for ways to sort of either market that correctly or finding the target audience to be able to use the FSA product, because it was the one filing option that did have the lowest amount of taxpayers utilizing it. For us in our virtual platform, what we utilize is DocuSign as a way to collect the taxpayers' information and collect their signatures. We have a DocuSign version of the intake sheets, the consent forms. And then we also use the FormStack platform for the appointment scheduling. and as a way for us to capture the taxpayers' information so that we can contact them and get them scheduled for an appropriate appointment, either through virtual, through the FSA lab sessions that we did, or through the mobile unit or the traditional in-person units.
Wow, thanks. That's definitely a pretty robust set of offerings that you had within the program. Did you, just quickly, did you find that that was challenging to kind of manage each of the different options? Did you leave it up to your partners? How did you help kind of work within the partners to decide the model? And did you find that to be challenging?
It was challenging, but we sort of tested the waters out last season, so we kind of knew what to expect this season. We do work with VITA partners that we've been working with for previous years before the pandemic hit. So Bethpage this was our 20th season being part of the VITA program. So up until 2020, we kind of had a solid base of partners in the community that kind of knew the program and what was involved with it. So everything that we did was appointment based. So each partner was in charge of scheduling the appointments. They knew what website to direct the taxpayers to so we can capture their information. We got the scheduling ahead of time. I think for the in-person locations, which were the library locations, we had to have a schedule ready and set by the end of November. So by the end of 2022, we kind of pretty much knew what our schedule was going to be like for 2023.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. I'm really excited to continue to hear from everyone and find out what works best. So thanks so much for coming off mute and talking with us a little bit about your program. Before we shift to what's coming into the chat, and things are coming in fast and furious, I've got Roman on the line, who will be our last caller, I think, for this section. So Roman, are you still there?
Yes. Hi, Kara. Hi, Graham.
Hey, Roman.
How are you guys? Okay.
Good.
So with that, that's
Good.
good. That's good. Good to hear. We survived the tax season. So with tax aid, we have 6 models, really. You have the traditional, right? The drop off. We have what you call an alternative tax preparation, which is a do-it-yourself with or without a virtual coach. And then we have the no site visit, 1 visit site, and 2 visit sites, right? So those are the 6 delivery models that we have. Actually, we even have FSA. It's just that I think most of those FSA sites that we're doing in person, right? FSAs are done with our VITA partners. But so those are our models. We noticed that the traditional sites have gone up, right, in numbers compared to last year. And the drop off, no site visit, 1 visit site, 2 visit sites, all those virtual have gone down, except for 1, the ATP, alternative tax preparation, which seemed to have gone up for this year slightly. So what we're trying to do right now, and I may be speaking for myself, we want, of course, there's a lot of these models, and obviously these models were also created because of the pandemic. Now, if the question is, if after the pandemic, what should you do, right? So we're trying to see how to consolidate now, right? And see which ones of these are still, which will still be useful after the pandemic, and which ones can go. And hopefully we'll be able to consolidate. But at the same time, with some of those service delivery models, we realized that, we have to provide everyone an opportunity to prepare their taxes, including the shut-ins or those in the remote areas, right? So we're starting to realize that some of the models that we created during the pandemic are really becoming more relevant. Because if we scrap them off from our list, then we won't be able to serve shut-ins or those who are in remote. So that's what we're trying to do right now. But and I think we finished up a little less than 1 million e-filed tax returns. So I think that's a lot of big increase from last year, because last year we were only around 812,000. Now we might have already surpassed 1 million taxpayers for this year. So that's all I wanted to share. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Roman. I really appreciate it. And I do want to kind of go into the chat before we move to the next section, because we had some really great things to come in to the chat. But Roman, I think you said something really great, is trying to figure out what different models are going to work within your program and your geographic area. I want to share something that came into the chat. Mandy Hughes. This was only our second year as a VITA site, which I can imagine is very, very daunting when you're navigating a global pandemic at the same time. This is challenging just on a regular day. We're the only site within a 26,000-mile radius. We have to use the drop-off method. We've had some difficult time finding volunteers, plus such a high demand that we worked 3 days a week doing intakes and then worked remotely preparing returns and reviewing. So thanks, Mandy, for sharing that in the chat. I do think that it is a lot. It's a pretty detailed process. I think that everybody has worked really hard to kind of streamline it as much as possible. But we are doing a lot of great work within our own, our own capacity to be able to bring this, bring the program to the community. So I think that's really great. A lot of our areas are geographically different, so could be in a very rural area. And it's really just great to see how hard everybody's working to bring access to the free tax assistance out into the community. But we couldn't do the work that we're able to do kind of without our volunteers and all things related to volunteers. And that is a nice segue to our next topic area in regards to volunteer management. So we've got another poll for you, and I'm really interested in hearing some feedback. We couldn't do the work that we're able to do without our volunteers. Did you get more volunteers this year compared to the last 3 years? Please select one, yes, no, other, and explain in the comments. And all of that really is the same. We want to hear from you. What worked well in terms of volunteer recruitment? Did you have your returning volunteers that came back? What would you like to improve, and what are the best practices that you'd like to share? So I'm really interested in seeing the poll results from you guys. So please put make your selection there. We'll give you another couple of seconds. And I see the attendees are going up, so thanks again for joining. I know we had an IRS call that's wrapping up, so thanks for coming right into this conversation on the debrief. Did you get more volunteers this year compared to last year? A little more than 50% said yes, 40% said no, and a little bit, 9% said other, explained in the comments. So I'm really excited to hear about volunteer recruitment and management. I'll say for us, from a perspective from our program, we did see a lot of volunteers. We always have a lot of volunteer interest, right? Folks that are really interested and intrigued about the program, but it does take a lot to get folks through the certification to what I call and refer within my program, the start line. So to the start of the season, getting them to a site, getting them attached there, getting them connected, whether it's in person or virtual. And so it's just really key to try to get back as many of our returning volunteers as possible, those that have experience and are familiar. So we can pull the poll down now. I think that's great. And if we've got anyone on the line, again, don't hesitate to come off mute, call in, put stuff in the chat, and I'm waiting for my team behind me to give me some of those comments coming in. I'm really interested to see if folks were coming back, were more comfortable coming in site. I know within our own program, we've got volunteers that have made the transition to our virtual team and will stay there and are really comfortable doing returns from home. And it's also allowed us to get volunteers from outside of our geographic area for the first time. And thank you. I think we've got someone coming up. Ever, I think you're back on the line with us.
Yes, so I just wanted to add that before the pandemic, we primarily utilized student volunteers from the local colleges and universities. So in 2021, we didn't use any outside volunteers, just internal Bethpage employees. But in 2022, we did start offering some in-person, and we had a small turnout of volunteers. But this year, what we noticed with all of the in-person sites is that a lot of the student volunteers still preferred to volunteer virtually. So there was very few willing to do it in person, and more so looking for remote or virtual opportunities.
Okay, interesting. I think now, did you find in terms of staffing the needs at your site, did you go back to using, I think you said go back to using your student volunteers, or
yes, for the in-person sites that we worked with the partners, we did utilize the retired volunteers, if that makes any sense. We did get some volunteers referred over to us by AARP and from the IRS itself. But the students that we primarily worked with in the past, they're the ones that preferred virtual and remote.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I think that's definitely, within our own program, we've got a mix of student volunteers from a couple of universities, and as well as our community volunteers in terms of providing support to the program itself. I think one of our challenges has always been converting that volunteer that's interested in the program into someone that's going to be, a dedicated volunteer that you can count on. Now, do you guys have a minimum number of volunteer hours that they need to do within the program? Or is it more open-ended what they're able to do within their own schedules?
So the bare minimum that we request is 3 hours a week, based on the model that we only do VITA services on Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursdays. So they would have to do at least a 3-hour shift in either of those 3 days between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m.
Okay, gotcha. So you have a pretty wide range on that, on those 3 days that your volunteer can kind of plug into at that shift. That's been great. Have you found that you're in need of kind of expanding out? You're always in need of more volunteers, or do you have more that you can handle?
So it was kind of like a little bit of both on both ends. We didn't have enough virtual opportunities for the outside volunteers. So those volunteers requesting virtuals were referred to other VITA programs here in New York. And then for the in-person sites, we found ourselves requesting for more volunteers because, like I said, a large majority of the volunteers that we did receive, usually they were looking for more virtual opportunities, except for those community volunteers and retired volunteers.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's definitely just a challenge. I'm trying to manage. While I have you on your line, are you going to do anything to recognize the volunteers that you had this year? Did you do anything during the season to kind of keep them kind of engaged and excited? Anything special that you want to share?
Yeah, so we are going to be sending them out a Bethpage gift packet, which includes a Visa gift card, and as well as some sort of Bethpage promotional materials for the summer, which is like a beach basket, beach blanket, and a beach chair with a beach umbrella. Sort of like, I thank you for your time and dedication during tax season. Now go out and enjoy the summer.
Oh, that's pretty amazing. I think that's what's so exciting about the opportunity to volunteer within the program. It is during the more colder time period, and many kind of shift to being able to enjoy the summer. So I think that's a really great idea. So thanks for sharing your feedback. And I'm going to kind of go to the comments now to let folks hear what folks are saying in the chat. So don't feel like you have to come off mute if you don't want to speak out loud. But I'd love to chat with you. I think we had Julia say in the comments, we also had more retirees willing to volunteer this year than earlier in the pandemic, and I think that's really key. Honing in on retirees that may have a little bit more flexibility to be able to give. Especially if you've got sites that have those daytime hours, I think that may be harder to fill with your working volunteers or maybe even your students. So I think that's really encouraging to hear as well. And I'm going to kick it over to Graham, who wants to say a few words. about volunteers. Graham, are you there?
Yep, I'm right here. So I just wanted to ask the group, as most of you know, here at Prosperity Now, we meet every week with SPEC and people from their national headquarters. And we've been hearing from them that volunteer numbers are up through recruitment from the SPEC office. And I'm just curious if anyone on the line saw that resulted in more volunteers getting to your actual sites. Did SPEC refer more people to you? Do you feel like that was helpful towards you? One of the things we do is after this debrief, we then debrief with SPEC. So we'd love to be able to give them some feedback on whether or not that was working out for sites in person.
Graham, while we wait for folks to come on the line or come into the chat, I'll say we did see a number of SPEC referrals. I haven't had a chance to really total up what we saw, but we definitely saw SPEC referrals coming in that had connected, with national and had completed an orientation. From my memory, and I won't say this is true until I really look at it, a lot of our volunteers that came from SPEC were outside of our area and were interested in doing virtual volunteering, which we were able to accommodate with our virtual site. But that was where many of our volunteers came from that were outside of our geographic footprint.
Okay, yeah. I don't see any hands raised about this, but I do see in the chat that seems like people, it's a mixed bag. Some people saw a little bit of an increase in SPEC volunteers. So that's good to hear. Some people didn't. But yeah, thanks for everyone sharing that opinion with us. Looks like Taylor says we did get more referrals from SPEC. Out of 25, about 3 to 4 worked out. And that's important feedback to know. I mean, a referral is good, but the volunteer actually showing up is what's important. I wonder if that's a similar experience to others. Feel free to put it in the chat if it is.
Yeah, Graham, I'm definitely interested in hearing from other partners if they have similar experiences to ours. As I think I said when I kicked off this section, we have a number of folks that expressed an interest in volunteering, but it's really been challenging for us over the last couple of years and just even before the pandemic to convert that interest into a dedicated volunteer. And as my volunteer coordinator always says, sometimes it takes a couple of years of them expressing an interest before we convert them into what we call a dedicated or ongoing volunteer. So I'm just curious if anyone else has any other feedback. I'll also add, just because I'm looking at the chat, I think a couple of folks have said didn't receive any volunteers from SPEC or any identified SPEC referrals. Sometimes that's challenging too. I think if they don't identify, we're always trying to make a point of asking people how they heard about us. So I think that's just really key. Also in the chat, Ann said, best new volunteers have been from word of mouth from our current volunteers. And I definitely would agree. They're our best. They are our best. Word of mouth is our best referral source, whether it's volunteers or our customers if we're looking to cultivate more customers. Had a question that came into the chat. How do I get chat into the format? On the right-hand panel of your screen, there should be a chat option. It's at the on the right-hand side. You should be able to click the chat, open the little window, and you should be able to put in your question. You could also then raise your hand on the right-hand screen to be able to talk to us, come off mute. So we'll finish up this section. I don't see anything else coming in to the chat and go on to our next section. So if we could advance the slide, we're going to go to outreach and partnerships. As we're kind of going into the seeing what happened within the season as we kind of moved out of the really heavy part of the pandemic. It's still present and we're aware of it, but with this, did you bring new partners in for this filing season? yes, no, kept the same partners, or others. I'm really interested, one, in did you bring new partners on board? Were you able to try out anything new this filing season? If you were able to maintain your existing partners, or if you still had some partners that were hesitant to come back into the VITA fold. I know we've experienced all of those within our own program, able to kind of reestablish partnerships, think about partnerships in different ways. I've heard a lot from our first topic area about our service delivery models, folks using drop-off. So please make sure that you're answering the poll questions. I think too that really kind of look out to me. Yes, we were able to bring new partners on board, and many kind of kept the same partners. But I'm really interested in hearing some feedback from you guys to talk more about what you were able to do, highlight the work that you've done in your areas. So I'm really interested in kind of hearing what's going to happen as we were able to kind of go back to the traditional tax preparation, go into trying out new things. And we've got someone on the line. I think it's Ocean as the first caller that we have. So thanks so much for raising your hand. Tell us where you're from.
Hey, Ocean, it's Justin here at Prosperity Now. It looks like you're self-muted, so it might be a mute on your back end. So why don't we go over to Roman, Kara? How's that work? How's
Okay,
that sound?
thanks. And Ocean, please come back. Roman, I'll turn it over to you first.
All right. Well, for tax aid, what we did this year, which actually we did a pilot. We piloted a partnership with Oak Street Health. Oak Street Health is a primary care provider in 22 states and 175 locations all around. We wanted to test if we can co-locate a tax, site and in a healthcare provider. And we were able to pilot in 6 sites. We created an SOP to basically help us when we expand. And then we also tested what both sites can bring. So for next year, we are hoping to expand to between 20 and 175 tax sites. It depends. So we need to make discussions from here on.
Roman, interesting. What kind of model did you use in this pilot?
For the pilot, we only use 2. We used in-person traditional and drop-off.
Great. And you said co-located in this facility. Did you have set hours? Was it open to the public, or just open to that
open it
facility?
To public. We basically, it's by appointment only, and it's in our site locator, tax aid site locator. So because we wanted to test that, we wanted to make sure what's the best methodology for scheduling an appointment for next year.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much. I really appreciate that, Roman. And thanks for giving us that exciting idea in terms of co-locating a site. I think we've got Ocean back on the line. Ocean, are you there? If you can hear me, we
Yes,
can
I
hear
am.
you.
Can you hear me?
Oh, awesome. Ocean, where are you from?
I can. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
I am from Bay Area Legal Aid in Oakland, California. We don't generally do taxes for clients, but we've been helping folks with stimulus checks, which requires us to do taxes for them. It's been quite a journey over the last couple of years. The major problem has been identifying folks. We have a lot of folks who are unhoused, may or may not have IDs. The IRS has made it easier with the ID Meet platform, but we're still having the problem with the last hurdle of just sometimes, even though people do the face recognition, they're saying it's not good enough, and then they have to call, and then calling the IRS is almost impossible to get through to somebody. So we're getting to the point where like the taxes are filed, everything looks good, and we just can't get over the final hurdle of IDing people. So just looking for any feedback from folks or ideas around dealing with those issues, particularly around folks who are unhoused, don't have an address, maybe have never filed taxes before. Thank you. Pass.
Awesome. Great, Ocean. Thanks so much. And thanks for jumping into the fold. Definitely for connecting maybe traditional non-filers or most recent non-filers, bringing them into filing to be able to get those stimulus payments and those most important benefits that have happened over the last couple of years. Definitely still seeing that. I think that's very prevalent within the work that we're doing, especially in our virtual site, trying to help folks obtain those benefits and getting them into being successful. Definitely jumping through those hurdles, I think has been challenging as well. So I'd love, please put in the chat if anybody has had those same experiences or has any ideas on being successful and helping folks getting through that last hurdle. You know, this year, I think what we were able to do, we had a couple of partners that left us during the pandemic, did not return, but we were able to reestablish some new partnerships in the same areas. And we definitely were lucky to be able to reestablish partnerships. For our new partners, you know, we looked at doing just the drop-off model, not as maybe as intensive as filing the full tax return, but does still require a lot of training and collaboration to make that successful. So that's one idea that we were able to reestablish a missing piece kind of in our service footprint, and reshifting partnerships into navigators to help customers upload documents into our virtual system, where our team would then pick up and handle the tax return preparation. I'll also pause here to say, sorry for having technical difficulties kind of in the chat. I hope you're able to still connect with us by raising your hand, coming off mute to be able to talk with us. Got something that came into the chat from Brian. Can the taxpayer avoid the e-file hurdles and mail the return in? It will be a longer process, but for those unhoused, it will at least get a return in process. Definitely agree there, Brian. I know we've had to shift some of ours into paper returns. It is a longer process, as we all know, turning a return to a paper, but that is definitely one way to get the process rolling. So I do agree there.
Yeah, Kara, if I can chime in just for a second, it's Graham again. I just wanted to encourage Ocean to remember that it's not going to work every time, but to remember that the ID requirements are for any government ID that has a picture on it. That's generally my advice, is just remember to think expansively and remember that the ID requirements and documentation requirements are, they define the type of document, they don't say which document in every case. So try to be as open-minded as possible when thinking about what kind of IDs you accept. I can also say from personal experience working to secure people who need help with stimulus checks, working in your local prison system will be a very much a source of people who have not had the ability to file for a stimulus check, but are definitely interested in doing so.
Graham, thanks for chiming in there. I definitely see that more frequently in our online work. That kind of spreads out across the state of Virginia where we're located, and not just in our geographic area. But just definitely trying to make sure we're trying to work with as many people as we can to get them access to those benefits while there's still time. So that's just really key to remember. still kind of time to file those prior year returns, to claim those benefits that were so important during the last couple of years. In terms of outreach and kind of connecting with new partners, loving the idea of just making sure that all of our area community partners are aware of our services, where we have the capacity to be able to do more. And this is kind of where we are right now, being in May. We finished kind of the bulk of our work in the community that I'm in with our partners. But I always say that we've just gotten to the first finish line. This April 15th, 18th time period is just the first finish line. We're all still doing work to kind of wrap up grant reporting and all those great things. But here in our area, we shift to postseason work and still continue to help people meet the requirements. So I think I'm really just working with new partners to letting people know about our services. It's just really key. Flyers and information that's available on our website, and just going out in all of our materials that we do for the larger work that we have, is just really key. I'll pause here to see if we've got anybody on the line, anything coming in the chat. And if anybody has any ideas on how to bring new partners in, what's good. I'll pause to say we've got Jim on the line. Jim, where are you from? Jim, if you can hear me, we can't quite hear you yet. Just make sure that you're unmuted. Okay, I think we're waiting for Jim to come back. He's having some issues with Mike. Please don't let this discourage you from coming on, sharing your ideas. Definitely want to hear more about what's going on in your communities, what has worked well. Hi,
good afternoon. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Hi, thank you. I'm Christina Cave. I'm with Baker Ripley. It's a development community service here in Houston. And we have a VITA program as well. And talking about outreach and how to keep our partners engaged, I always talk about the media also being our partner. Great way to keep our community partners engaged, media engaged, is to take advantage of the multiple deadlines that we have talking about taxes. So as you know, the 2019 refund deadline this year is different from what would normally be at the end of tax season. So I'm definitely going to use that to pitch stories about the services that Baker Ripley is offering after tax season, because we will have 3 sites open. But I also use this to keep engaged with partners in our school districts, our college readiness programs, which are great partners to work with because they are helping families to apply for financial aid. And as you know, they need to get their taxes done. So it's better for them to be aware of us having the way to help them file their taxes, apply or renew their ITIN numbers ahead of time, instead of maybe them finding out early November. So just I just want to invite everyone to use those deadlines that are coming, for those who file an extension and things like that. that is a great way for you to promote your program, to reach out to your local media stations because they're always looking for content. And those big deadlines they're in national media, but they definitely want someone on the ground they can speak to, and also to connect their viewers to free quality services like we all offer.
Awesome. Christina, thank you so much for bringing that up. I think you bring up a lot of great points in terms of engaging with your resources within your area. Even though the first deadline is passed, still not too late to file that 2019 return, and especially if your partners are open and you've got the resources to be able to share. I think that's really great, and keeping them engaged so that when it is time to promote volunteer recruitment, when we get into that maybe later in the summer and the fall, then it's just a regular rotation, and it's always great to be prepared and ahead of time, especially if we're talking about I-10 renewals and needing to refresh paperwork. So thanks so much for sharing that. And I think we've got Jim back on the line.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me okay?
We can. Jim, thank you so much. Where are you from?
Phoenix, Arizona. I'm one organization, Masters of Coin, that's part of a coalition of providers in the Phoenix area where we all try to share resources and volunteers and such. And I just wanted to give a couple of ideas. I've heard about people reaching out to special populations and doing things over the off season to help build relationships with other partners. And we've identified several populations during the tax season that we're going to reach out and start helping. One is foster children. If you have foster children who are in multiple homes or that aged out during their time, and that nobody claims them as a dependent. If you go over the rules, they didn't stay in any place over 183 days. The state that provides aid is not counted towards their support. And so they can file a return and claim the recovery rebate credit. And we can go back. And so we've been able to involve this. It's still in process, but I think we're very close to where we've got actually the State Department that's going to reach out to some of those kids. And we're going to try to help them. Another population, we found a couple that, we all kind of know about Medicaid waiver payments. There was a test question a year or two ago, on the certification test, but you can use that money, even though you don't pay income tax, you can use it to qualify for the earned income tax credit. I just amended 3 years returns for somebody who got them $10,000 back. And we're going to have a couple of these agencies reach out to some of their recipients of the Medicaid waiver payments and see if we can't help them. A last population are Ukrainian refugees that have come here. This is a little bit more complicated because you've got to have international certification, but these refugees have temporary status. And so they may have worked a little bit, but temporary status means it's kind of like a temporary green card. They can file a resident return and be entitled to some of the credits. So I've talked long enough. I just wanted to share some ideas.
Jim, thanks so much. I think that's really great, especially the Medicaid waiver payments and kind of establishing those partnerships there that really, folks may not realize, how they can still utilize that income to qualify for those credits. And it's not too late to do those amendments for the returns that are still eligible. So I think that's really key if you're looking for engagement ideas on partners, or maybe you get that call and might be during the heart of the season, but now is the perfect opportunity to kind of expand and meet and brainstorm ideas on ways to shift the partnerships into a different level to be able to help folks. So I think that's fantastic, and thanks so much for sharing. I don't see that we've got anything else kind of in the pipeline, so it'll kind of segue into our next topic area. So next slide, in terms of obtaining documents. I know that's been really key. Again, I'll just refresh kind of a format that we've used when you're making comments and sharing ideas. What worked well? What would you like to improve? And what are best practices and that you can share? Or what didn't work as well previously. And I think here we're just looking for feedback on what challenges you guys faced at your sites, within your communities, in terms of folks coming prepared to the appointments. Were there challenges there in terms of, did they have their documents? Were they getting their W-2s and 1099s from their employers timely? Were they in need of getting transcripts and how to get those that can be usable within our VITA sites? Were they coming with their documentation ready for that appointment? And I know, just speaking while we're waiting for folks to chime in here, within our community partner sites, when we have our established partners, I think folks do come to our traditional tax sites that are the most prepared and ready to move forward. So we do have a high success rate and turnover in terms of getting those folks to completion. But we do have some of our other partners that are either new partners and they are doing a lot of education and outreach to folks on what to bring, how important it is to bring the documents in that we need. I'll pause. We've got a couple of callers. First, we'll go back to Ever. Ever, thank you so much for being so willing to chime in.
Sure, I just feel bad that I'm taking a lot of your time.
No, you're right on. You're very first. So please share, and we do have some other callers on the line.
All right, so the biggest challenge that we got with obtaining documents was being able to get taxpayers to first download the documents to their either laptop, cell phone, or other smart device, and then being able to upload it to our online platform, which is just in essence DocuSign, which just required them to click on a link and then be able to upload the image file or the PDF file. I think for us that was the biggest challenging thing. So we're always on the lookout for an easier platform or interface between the online software and the user end of the taxpayer. So we're always looking for recommendations on what could be an easier process for them.
Awesome. Yeah, I do agree. I think when we've worked with partners, kind of forward-facing partners that have helped be a navigator and helping them kind of upload documents into our ticketing system. So I'm right there with you. How can we make it so that it happens more often? I definitely would love to have others' feedback within this. So thanks, Ever, for sharing. I think we've got Denise on the line next. Denise, are you there? And she dropped off. Okay. Denise, come back to us. I think we've got, is it Latasha on the line? Latasha, are you there? I'm not sure if we're being able to connect. While we're waiting for folks to connect, I'm going to read some things that came out in the chat. Mark said, worked well, but not perfectly, asking people to pick up and fill out their intake form before arriving for their scheduled appointment. Also provided them with the checklist for what documents to bring. Mark, I definitely feel like that's a good idea, having the checklist to help people realize we've got that on our website, we've got it on some of our flyers. I definitely feel that that's helpful. Agree that it's not perfect in all cases there. I'll circle back to our callers on the line. Do we have Denise or Latasha, or do we need to move on to someone else? Because I think
we actually have someone on the line. One of our very, very good friends here, Brad Martin. I believe he had something he wanted to say. Awesome. Go ahead, Brad.
Thanks, Graham.
Hey, Brad.
Hey, how are you, Kara? Thanks for.
Good.
We're figuring this out as we go. The technology is wonderful. We found actually a really helpful thing. We had a number of people, which is not helpful, who for whatever reason did not have their SSA 1099s this year. They could bring us the letter that says what they were getting in 23, and they might have had the 21 version of their SSA 1099. But we found that we could send them to the local Social Security office, and they could actually get something same day and bring it back, which I did not think was still possible. But at least at our office, they were doing it. We had several people who would go down to SSA, get the form, and bring it back in an hour, and we could finish their returns. So I thought that was interesting. I thought they had stopped doing that. Any feedback on that?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm not sure that I had that happen within our in-person sites, or at least because I'm more connected to our online site. I will say that even our online folks were able to get information from Social Security that was a reprint, almost like an internal reprint of their SSA, because it didn't look the same, but it definitely wasn't. We had that get uploaded quite a few times. And more people were able to turn those back faster than I thought. But I wouldn't be able to say same day, just because you know, it was more online than anything. Were you having folks that were coming prepared with their other documents, W-2s and otherwise?
I think we had more people who were missing a 1099-R, and the scary thing about that is the only way we knew stuff was missing was because of carry forward, because your 1099-Rs generally don't change unless the pension or whatever gets sold to a different financial management company. But we would see 5 1099-Rs and they have 2. I think we saw more of that, and you just worry that if you've got somebody new, do you really have everything? They had no clue they were missing 3 1099-Rs and stuff like that. So we saw a good bit of that. And we, you know, the W-2s were fine. Most people knew, some of them had it on their phone, but they knew about having those. But the retirement forms were a challenge. And of course, you never know if you've got all the interest statements.
Right. Definitely. I feel that that's key. I think, but it just goes to show, Brad, how helpful it is when we have returning customers and we're able to look back at their history and really say, hey, last year you had this. Is that still the same? Is something different?
It's also a good plug for Global Carry Forward. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Agreed. I do love that because it's just so helpful to have that return, because many people don't bring it back. But Brad, thanks so much for sharing. I really appreciate it. I think we've got Christina on the line, if I'm not mistaken.
Christina, it looks like you are self-muted. You may need to come off mute on your side.
Christina, are you there? I just want to make sure navigated. While we're waiting for Christina or our next caller to come on, I'll also add, I haven't heard this yet from our speakers, in terms of folks being ready with IP pins. I think that has been a challenge again in the work that we've done. One, either folks not saying that they have the IP pins during the interview, and then the return gets rejected for needing one, and then being able to obtain it. I will say that I've had more success in getting folks connected to being able to get their IP pin, looking it up this year than we've been able to do in the past. So I think that has been very helpful, at least from our perspective. We've seen that happen a little bit more. So Desmond, I think we've got you on the line, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. Just a couple of comments. Yeah, the IP pin situation. Just worked with someone last night, and they went out, they created their account in ID.me, and they were able to get that pin like right away. It seemed that probably the most challenging thing is taking that selfie I created ID.me account for me, and I had a devil of a time with my cell phone, but when I did it with my laptop, it was much easier. On the topic of obtaining documents, SSA 1099s, for example, I've noticed that, well, they always bring in their award letter. And, you know, the initial reaction is that, hey, I'm trying to figure out what you got, not what you're going to get. And so, but having said that, though, I just came up with an algebraic formula that if you've got certain variables, like you know what the percentage increase is, you know what they are receiving for 2023, you can put a formula together and calculate what the 2022 Social Security amount was. And so it turns out it's like about 11.018 or something along that line. So it's like 11.018 times the 2023 amount, or if you know what the 2021 amount is, then you could figure out what their 2022 amount is. So from an algebraic perspective, and assuming that there's no withholding, of course, we've identified Social Security amounts that way. And I tested it by asking them that if they've got it, bring it. And I found out I was only off about $1 or $2, maybe $3. But from an income perspective, that's fairly close enough. So the other thing I found interesting from obtaining documents is that clients would send attachments to me either by email or something. And when I click on it, they've got a password on it. I think they've gone through Google Docs security. So there's some two-factor authentication in there that's maybe tied to my email address. So those that are more tech savvy, which I love working with, because that's how I learned. Then, so we do get documents securely that way as well. So Taxpayer Customer Portal has probably, once we get used to doing that, then there might not be a need for having something that requires a second set of, where you have to babysit 2 applications. So I'll just leave it at that.
Gotcha. Well, Desmond, thanks so much for chiming in there. I definitely feel like it's good. We want to make sure that we're preparing, high quality tax returns for our customers, and sometimes that can be challenging. Just making sure the documents are in order. I know that it's just really part of our job to just make sure we've got everything that we need to be able to prepare the return. And a lot of times there's some challenges. So definitely hats off for folks that are, maybe thinking outside the box and working with folks to getting their documents in as much as possible to be able to prepare accurate tax returns, I think is really key. I don't know that we've got anything else waiting on the line or in the chat here. So I'd like to segue us into our next topic area, which is the VITA grant program. It is May, and that means we're really working on applying or reapplying or doing reporting to maintain our VITA grant and other grants. So how's it going? I get this question a lot within my office. Aren't you glad tax season's over? And it's never over. I always jokingly say it's the gift that keeps on giving. We'd like to see in the poll question we've got here, when did you get your grant funds for the current grant period that we're in? And let us know. We're interested in, for those that are current grant recipients, when you got your grant funds. The team at Prosperity Now has really been working closely with the grants office to make sure, and our individual programs, for making sure that we're doing all the paperwork that's necessary for us to get our grant funds timely. And so please let us know when you received your current grant funds. When did the money get into your organization's bank account, if you're aware of that? So please select the time period or if that's not featured there, please let us know in the chat. We're really looking to share this information with SPEC. We can't do it without your feedback, so please let us know. All right, we had the majority looks like in the time period of March, some with a close second coming in April, and we had some that got December, January, but mostly in March and April. Definitely would love to hear any kind of feedback. Anyone wants to come off mute, talk about any, if they have any questions, how's it going in terms of reporting, the responsibilities that are coming in now. I know from our end, it's just wrapping up for reporting and kind of sharing the most information. Again, a little bit of different format, but please put information in the chat, raise your hand, or dial in by telephone. Someone commented they just got it, came in yesterday. So I know that is across the board. Are there any questions in terms of reporting things that are coming out? Are you able to capture all of the information that you need for your grant reports? Are there other supplemental surveys and materials that you use to report information? I know we're keen on reporting in reference to TANF eligibility, so there's additional survey questions that we ask on our end.
Yeah, if I can jump in, Kara, I'd love to just ask the group as well. As you said, we here at Prosperity Now we're very tuned in on when the funds are getting to you all. And I'm just curious if people can say in the chat, they can raise their hand, ask a question. But it is getting, with money coming in March, is that working for everyone? Does that cause problems for your organization? Is that something that Prosperity Now, should we be concerned? Should we be trying to get you this money earlier? Or does getting the grant funds most of the way through the actual tax season cause significant problems for you? Yeah, love to just hear the answer on that.
Graham, I'll say we just had something come in the chat, some back and forth with the new VITA grant officer. I know that may have been the case for many of us, having new grant officers resubmit previously accepted reports, back and forth, et cetera. Also additional comment, don't draw funds down until the end of the tax season, so it does not have an impact on us. So thank you, Taylor, for sharing that information. I think it's just really key to know if there are any challenges out there from the field. This is where we want to come in terms of being able to provide some additional support or, again, guidance on what needs to be shared with SPEC. So let's see, in the grants office, Lynn shared it would be great if TaxSlayer had more robust state level reports. We have state funding for VITA, but are very limited in the data we can report on to the state. And we've got also something else in the chat. It would be nice to know when funds are coming. It's worked okay for funds to come in March, but by then we've usually spent the full grant amount and can submit our full reimbursement request.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for sharing. It's nice to see some of the other comments as well. This is good feedback to get, and I appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'll just give another second or two to see if we have any other additional comments. in this particular topic area. I know it is fast and furious now as we kind of tick into May in terms of reapplying and applications while also straddling just the current season for those of us that continue to offer services. So I know this continues to be a pretty busy time as well. So I definitely agree there. But if there's anything else that we would like to, you would like to have support on, please let us know either here in the additional things that are going to be coming up, and reach out to the folks that are on this call from Prosperity Now. So I'll segue us anything, let's see, additional topics into what we haven't already covered. But I will pause to say, I think this might be something, Graham.
Yes, it is. I was hoping we were going to have a little bit more of a dramatic reveal for this, but as many of you may have seen in your email inboxes and have been hearing for a bit now, Prosperity Now is organizing a VitaCon 2023. For those of you who've been with us for many, many years, you know that way back in 2017, with Katie Schultz who's on the line, we had our first VitaCon. We have them every other year. The last time we had a VitaCon, it had to be virtually, but this year we're coming back in person in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. It's going to be September 6th through 8th. You should bookmark the page that we can put in the chat. It's where we're putting all of the information you're going to need to sign up for and register for the event. Registration is going to open June 1st. I'll say please book your hotels rooms, which is the Westin, where we'll be having the actual convention. Please book there. You're going to get the best rate in town, about $100 less than any place else in Pittsburgh. And again, registration is going to open on June 1st. This will be the first year that we do have a registration rate. I just wanted to let everyone know it's not going to be free this year. The registration rate will be a early bird registration of $200 and a regular registration of $250. But please follow and bookmark the link that we're going to put in the chat. We're going to be adding the agenda. That's where you'll be going to register. You'll also be getting plenty of emails from us over the course of the summer about VitaCon. But we just want to make sure everybody right now goes onto their calendars and blocks off September 6th through 8th to join us in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I think there's many people in here, myself included, who can tell you how great of a time VitaCon is. And in fact, the last time that there was a VitaCon in person in 2019 is the first time I really heard of Prosperity Now at all when I worked for a Vita organization. So I obviously really enjoyed that convention as I'm sitting here now, and we really want to see everyone there. And it looks like there's some questions coming in, requests for more practical working sessions than there are plenaries. Okay, that's good to know. We'll definitely take that into account. So another question is Prosperity Now still using the, oh, I see. We'll have to follow back up with you, Joya, on the Vita pilot survey data question. I don't have an answer for you right now. But yes, again, please join us this September 6th through 8th in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at the Westin Pittsburgh. We're going to be with our good friends and Prosperity Ton members, Just Harvest, who are also on the line. They're going to be our Vitus host within Pittsburgh. So we look forward to seeing you there. And we have one question that came in. What happens at the conference? Well, this year we're going to have about 1.5 days of concurrent sessions. So we'll have dual track. You can pick which one you want to go to. It'll be sessions on a variety of different topics, everything from volunteer recruitment, Vita administration, Vita grant, where we're still coming up with what the actual topics will be. That'll be posted on the website. But besides just learning, there's also getting to meet all these other people in the country that are doing the same work that you do. That to me was the most powerful part about the VitaCon that I went to. Is I knew that I felt pretty alone doing Vita in my area. We were the only people doing it, but getting to see that there's actually hundreds of other people that are doing the same work, understand what you mean when you say 13614, don't roll your eyes or kind of drift off like your family does when you talk about work. That's a pretty powerful thing. Looks like there's a question. It is definitely training. It is definitely a training activity, and you can use your grant funds. No, we are definitely still open for suggestions for session suggestions, and we have a VitaCon email address that again can be put in the chat. Oh, and it looks like Justin's actually already answered that as well. All right. Any other questions about VitaCon? Feel free to raise their hands and speak up too.
Carla, you're on the line. So you have your hand up. If you want to unmute yourself. All right, we'll go to Desmond, and then we'll head into wrap up the next steps. Desmond?
Yes, I was wondering, I heard someone say that they were looking for a more robust looking for a more robust state report. I'd like to hear more about that, because I'm always looking for a way to do anything more robust.
Yeah, why don't we set up some more time somewhere else to discuss that, because we are right up at the end of time, Desmond, but that's a great point regarding that robustness of state reports. All right, with that, that is basically the end of our session. But before you go, we have a few wrap up and next steps for you to take away from today's conversation. So hi again, it's Justin. Next steps, we would love for you to complete the survey. You'll be receiving a survey right when this webinar closes, for you to rate us, rate your experience, hear a little bit more about some topics you would want to discuss, or any questions you have about the materials discussed today. It's a lot to absorb, so we want this to be a moment for you to provide feedback at your own pace. So please do complete the survey. Sign up for our networks to stay in the know about any issues you care about. The Taxpayer Opportunity Network is just a single one of our great issue networks, which include financial security, affordable home ownership, and we are constantly expanding those and doing more service offerings. And finally, visit our advocacy center to stay up to date with our advocacy efforts. It's a great space for you to get involved with your members of Congress and push forward the issues that you care about and that Prosperity Now can help elevate. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining. Thanks again, Kara and Graham, for taking part as our panel of experts. And thank you in the audience for being part of this conversation. This is what makes TON so valuable, and we're excited to potentially see you in September. With that, have a great day.